Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm so excited to get to talk with Teri Kingston today. Teri Kingston is someone that I consider a friend, a colleague, someone that I've kind of traveled along this journey with, and she's kind of been on my side there. She is a TEDx speaker, an award-winning speaker, a TEDx coach, but more importantly, she is a grief educator. And this is such an honor to get to have her on the podcast today to be able to talk about that. But I actually met Teri when I was giving my own TEDx talk about attachment styles. And she came into my Toastmasters meeting, got to know us, helped us so much. I have her book here. That's one of the very first books I read on really how to give a TEDx talk, which is Get Ready for TED When TED is Ready for You. It's so nice to have you on the show, Teri. Go ahead and say hi, introduce yourself, anything else.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. I remember dropping in on that Toastmaster meeting and getting to meet all of you that were preparing for your TEDx talk. But anytime you drop into a club like that, there's always one or two people that stand out with their readiness or their eagerness or just their connection with their own content. And that's what you did for me. And I watched your talk later and I thought, yeah, she nailed that. She nailed that. She nailed that. And I was just so excited for you that you got the opportunity and you did it so well. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Teri. And it was such a divine thing to get to have you be a part of that community and to get to know you, because when I read your book, I started kind of getting interested of like, this is such a well-written book. I mean, look, it's not that big. It was such an easy read. It helped me so much. And I looked and there was this little tiny thing that said Lucky Book Publishing. And I was like, that's interesting. I'm going to reach out to Teri and find out a little bit more about this. And that is how I ended up signing up with Lucky Book Publishing myself. As my listeners know, I will be finishing up my book soon, hopefully with a launch this fall, some sort of event happening in LA with some of our other authors. And it has been an amazing community to be a part of. Do you just want to talk a little bit about Lucky Book Publishing real quick, Teri?
Well, as one of the co-founders said yesterday, I'm one of the original old girls.
You're an OG. Like, you really are.
I really am an OG. I do remember getting a cheeky little note from Samantha not long after I started, and she mentioned something like, you're really good for your age. And I kind of laughed at her and I said, you may want to check your ageism bias there, but I have never felt anywhere near the age I am. And usually I haven't looked it either.
No,
but I do have to tell you that, and we will get into this a little bit as the talk goes on today, grief ages you beyond what you can even imagine. And there's just so many components to the anticipatory grief journey. When I was a caregiver for my now late husband when he was very ill, when you know what's coming and you don't want to face it, that's a huge part. So anticipatory grief is a big part of what I'll be talking about more in the future. But dealing with losing your second chance, your golden years, gentlemen, and all of that possible future of what I thought I'd be living at this senior age of mine that's just simply not there anymore. So a huge part of the grieving process is coming to terms with the future I have, and the present that I have is nothing like I imagined it to be when we first married. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Teri. Can we back up a little bit, and can you tell my listeners a little bit of your story, how long you were married, when your husband passed, all of that, to kind of set the groundwork. And then I would love to touch more on this anticipatory grief and what grieving has been like for you afterwards.
Absolutely. So funnily enough, because we mentioned Toastmasters already, I met Harry in my first year of Toastmasters, and I think his second or something, or 30, he'd been in it forever, in a contest at the district level, which means...
I didn't know this. That's adorable.
I had won at club, area, division, and I was at district. I hadn't even been a Toastmaster for a year, and I'm on the district stage for the International Speech Contest, which is our highest level of speaking, and the evaluation contest the next day. So I met Harry in the briefing for the evaluation contest. He'd heard me speak the day before, and he came up to me, and this man was tall, handsome, very charismatic, very gentle, and had a tendency to see potential in someone and believe in you more than you believed in yourself at the time, and then help you rise to the level of his beliefs in you. And so he came up to me at the briefing and he said, You did really well yesterday. You're obviously new at this. You have a lot of raw, natural talent, but you really need some coaching. Can I coach you?
He did, yeah. Oh, and wait, when was this? Like what year? Like how many years
That
ago?
was 2003, in the
Beautiful.
spring of 2003 at the conference in Pointe-Claire, Montreal.
Well, he just came
So
right out and did that. I love that
he
so
did.
much.
Now, mind you, we were friends for a couple of years, and I joined an advanced club he'd started. He mentored and coached me for 2 or 3 years before he took me out for dinner one day, and he said, "This is what I see happening next. What do you think?" And it was basically an engagement proposal. And by then, I'd really gotten to like and admire and really learn from how he coached other people. He mentored so many police officers in the Ottawa Police Force, helped them with promotions. He just was a huge part of the community, and watching him, his heart for community service, his heart for Toastmasters was huge. And yeah, and so that's how we met. And Toastmasters was kind of our thing, which is a good thing because he went on to be part of the district executive, which was extremely busy. And at his side, I must have visited over 200-300 clubs in 5 or 6 years. I tell people he exposed me to more Toastmaster speaking than I would have ever had the opportunity had I just been myself bobbing along the Toastmaster current. And so many, many clubs, many different styles of speakers, evaluated by everybody, but mostly by him in the car on the way home after a meeting. Honestly, that's where real
That's so
love comes
cute.
in, because you have to listen and you have to say, "Yes, dear," but you also have to take it on board because he always knew what he was talking about.
And that just sounds, be able to take that kind of feedback, that kind of, constructive criticism or the evaluation, as we would say in Toastmasters. I see you talking about it and this beautiful, secure relationship that you have with him. To be able to actually hear that for someone means you trust them, you feel safe with
Yes.
them, you love them. And that part is so incredibly important. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more now. When did you find out that he only had so much longer?
Well, there were different things that were happening. He wasn't all that healthy when we met, but neither of us knew it. There were different incidences. He started having high blood pressure and nosebleeds, and then he had kidney stones, and then there was something else and something else. But we were taking Thanksgiving dinner to my father, I think a year or two after my mom had died. And he loved to cook. So he'd been in the kitchen all day, cooking the turkey, standing on his feet. And when he went to carry the turkey out to the car, he looked at me and he said, "I just don't feel right. Like, I don't feel well at all." We got to my dad's house. We walked in. I put the turkey in the kitchen, and my dad came out and he said, "There's something wrong with Harry. He doesn't look right." And so fortunately, he allowed me to make an appointment to see a family doctor the next day. And this is very rare. This family doctor understood his symptoms, knew what was potentially happening, and got us an appointment at the Ottawa Heart Institute within a few days.
Nice.
This is one of the best heart clinics in all of Canada, but they also have a special branch called the Pulmonary Arterial Hypertension Clinic. That's what it turned out he had. Most people go undiagnosed for years because doctors think it's asthma or bronchitis or different heart things. They don't understand that there are specific symptoms that show up when the pulmonary arteries, which are the arteries in the right side of the heart, not the left, which is usually where people have heart issues, but they're clogged and they can't get enough oxygen into people's bodies. And so he would fall asleep anytime he sat down because he was constantly exhausted. He couldn't catch his breath. We would go for walks across to the river in front of where we lived, and he would have to sit down and he just would say, "Oh, I just want to watch the ducks." And he would not let me know.
Yeah. Finding like kind of excuses to make you feel comfortable and safe throughout this.
Absolutely.
So after he was diagnosed, about how much longer did you have to be able to be with him? Did you do it? You mentioned anticipatory grief. I'm assuming, hearing that word, it kind of means somebody is nearing the end of their life. This could be the case for maybe people as well who have loved ones with cancer, something like this. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's when we got the diagnosis, the doctors were really clear. They said, "We don't go on Google, don't look up the symptoms. You'll read all sorts of stuff that just aren't true. But it's a very aggressive, incurable disease that he had." And so So it was rare, aggressive, and incurable. Those were the words that kind of stuck in my head. 3 to 5 years was the average prognosis. They put them on very strong drug therapy, which is almost like continuous chemotherapy. It's actually really horrible. And some patients do well for way, way, way longer. But he had some other issues that were already showing up. And so for him, this was kind of the winding down. He was a hunter, a fisher. He loved being outdoors. He was strong. He was vibrant. And then this disease got hold of him. We did well for the first 3 years. We continued. He was, district officer during those years. We did
So
a
he's
lot
still
of,
working or
oh
doing his thing and
yeah,
all of that
oh
stuff is still
yeah,
going. Okay.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then eventually the drug therapies, they start stacking them up. And then eventually the disease just keeps overcoming the therapies.
Because my heart kind of started like feeling something right now as I was talking, and I'm just thinking, can you talk about what it must have felt like in those 3 years to see the love of your life going about doing his life like normal, doing all these things, but this is not going to last. Like you said, you're not getting your golden years with this man, this love of your life. How does that change you? What did you do differently?
Gained 50 pounds. That's a huge part of it. Well, the first couple of years we both just, we're both speakers. So he became a member of the board for the Pulmonary Hypertension Association of Canada. I became an advocate. So we threw ourselves into making sure Parliament, making sure medical systems knew what we needed to get drugs approved. We were very active. I helped start a support group for the Ottawa community, which is still one of the strongest and biggest in the country, of patients, because the patients were always well taken care of, and caregivers, because I felt the caregivers had an unheard voice that needed to be supported and loved and carried through so we could carry what can't be carried. And so I've spoken at their conferences. I actually helped them develop a tool to help caregivers map their wellness throughout different stages of this anticipatory grief journey, and just general awareness. We have a great support group on Facebook that I'm still part of, even though it tears my heart out sometimes to see other people that I've come to know and love going down that slope where the symptoms are getting worse and the drugs are no longer coping. So one of my ways of coping, you can't see my bookshelf, but I have a bookshelf that's about 12 books long of anticipatory grief. How do you deal with death when you know it's coming? How do you face what can't be faced? I read a lot. I'm not a support group person other than the one I helped start, but I read a lot. I took a lot of webinars about understanding end of life, and I wrote a TEDx talk. That's where that talk came from.
It
Was
sounds
me
like
trying to cope with it.
Yeah, it sounds like you really kind of put your energy into doing stuff, which I think is just so beautiful. Like you fought for legislation, you kept working, you didn't kind of just stop. You guys didn't just stop your lives, you didn't just grieve the entire time. There was
No.
grief that was happening whilst kind of making something out of this. And you're right, your TEDx talk is one of the most powerful TEDx talks I've watched in a long time. Like, it was just incredibly special. So a bit of my personal story, I lost my dad back in 2014 with a heart attack, what they call the widowmaker. So it's the opposite of anticipatory grief. It was getting the phone call and not completely just being like, you're making a joke, right? Like, I didn't even get to say goodbye. So my mother, she was 60 at the time, and my dad had just turned 64. And so she did the same thing. She is starting that second stage of her life, not expecting this, without the love of her life, going through all of this, and she's just completely lost. And I actually sent her your TEDx talk, and I remember it made her cry a lot, because having someone there to kind of understand this process, it's when you're in it. And would you agree with this? And maybe again, anticipatory grief is different than sudden grief, but sometimes you just feel alone. What would you say to those women out there? Maybe someone's listening right now, they've lost their loved one, they've lost the love of their life, and she just feels so alone. What would you say to that?
There's almost no words that can help anybody make it feel better, because no words can. When I moved here this past summer, I went through, or 3 summers ago when I left Ottawa, I went through a stack of sympathy cards from Harry's funeral. And I was rereading them all. I didn't bring them with me. I let them all go, but I was rereading them all and realizing that no matter what people said at the time or how much they meant, none of it mattered. It's really strange because a sudden death is really difficult. Knowing someone's going to die is really difficult. I talk about it like it's like you're standing on train tracks and you can see the light of the train coming towards you, barreling towards you. You know it's coming. You're not even sure you can step out the way, and half the time you don't know if you want to. And that's a reality as well. It's probably one of the toughest things I've ever gone through. And I'm still, you're never not out of not missing that person. I don't think you're in the same stages of grief as when it immediately happens. But as someone said the other day, grief is universal, but everybody's experience with it is individual and unique.
It is. I love that. I want to repeat that. Grief is universal, right? Of course, we've all been through grief. We all will go through grief at some point in time, probably. But each person's experience is unique.
Unique. And
So
that's why I love to do what I'm doing now, which is kind of a grief advocacy, grief literacy education, in that we really need to understand that people need to grieve the way they need to grieve. And there's some wonderful active grief experts out there. I'm on all their groups, I think, and on LinkedIn and whatnot. But one of them has a book called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. And there's another one called Refuge in Grief. And most of the work that these women are doing, and there's one gentleman I've just started following who lost his wife a year or two ago. He's very articulate and very clear on Facebook. And we're alone. We'll never have that person back in our life because they are gone. The future we thought we would have, the trips Harry and I had planned, the houses we might have lived in, or what we would do to just having someone to have coffee at the kitchen table with, the way I started my TEDx talk, Yeah. I miss those wise conversations with somebody caring and warm and understanding on a daily basis.
This touches on something that I heard kind of my mom talk about, which she said something in one of her kind of grief-stricken moments of just being like, people don't understand that you're grieving more than the loss of your husband.
Yes.
Yeah, you're grieving exactly that. I think it was when you said like having coffee. Now, my mom and dad, they are smokers. So they have this like little special space outside in the back of their little house that they would go and have their morning smoke at. But that was that. It's like not having someone to speak to in the morning anymore, not having that person to grab you, the milk from the fridge while you're busy cooking something. Like for so long, she would turn to like say something because he's always right there.
He's always, yeah.
And then he's not anymore. And it's like, those are the griefs. Like there's grief after grief after grief after grief after grief. And I think honoring that heaviness is so important to all of us, not thinking I should be over this by now.
Exactly.
Can you speak a little bit on that concept? How long has it been since Harry's passed?
It was 8 years on June 27th of this year.
Okay.
So it's been a while.
8 years. And that feeling, that concept where just recently something happened and I started crying because I missed my dad for some reason or whatnot. And I had that immediate reaction, that like old school feeling of like, it's been like 11 years, Jen. What is, you know what I mean? Like, why are you not over this yet? And I stopped that immediately. The work that I do now, the self-compassion, all of that stuff, I immediately was like, you are allowed to feel and grieve however long you need to. But can you touch on that feeling where people say, I should be over this by now. I should have moved on. I should go get married. Any of that stuff.
I tell them to stop shooting on me.
Stop shooting. Yes.
We love to shoot on people. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. It has no place in grief language at all whatsoever. It's none of their business how long I take. Now, if I'm in deep grief that's debilitating after 8 years, I need help. There is kind of chronic grief or complicated grief or long-term grief. And that is when you need to be with a licensed practitioner, psychotherapist, psychologist, whatever, that specializes in helping people. I will never say move on, because you don't, but you move forward. And I have seen a beautiful illustration where there's a bookshelf. And so if you look at the first month of when Harry died, there might have been one book on the bookshelf, the book of Harry, the book of my life with Harry. And then it might have stayed empty for a year or 2 years, but eventually there are other books that come in. I'm now a grandmother. So, you might see the birth of my first grandchild. My son got married 6 months after Harry died. So I became a mother-in-law. There'd be other books that would be now part of that. But the book of Harry remains in that one space in the bookshelf. It doesn't move. It doesn't shift.
It's still there.
You just keep adding more experiences, more books, more holidays with the children, more Toastmaster things, more goals for myself that I just keep. I guess I'm extremely, from what people have told me, intrinsically motivated to just still keep finding purpose.
Finding
So,
purpose. I've heard that before, like in terms of what are the things that can really make your life satisfied, fulfilling. There's kind of 4 key things, usually it's whole foods, healthy foods, movement, and one of them is a sense of purpose.
yes.
And that sense of purpose, I heard that even when you were talking about the time before, in those 3 years, you and Harry had a sense of purpose together. You found that purpose. And sometimes it takes needing to go with a coach or a therapist or a psychologist to get them to help you find that purpose. But if you're feeling purposeless right now, you're just kind of mindlessly all over the place, that's okay, right? As well, for a little time. Like you said, a year, 2 years, take your time with it. And then if you're starting to feel stuck, if you're starting to feel like maybe I could be doing something a little bit more, but I don't know how, that's when you go and you get help. You find grief educators, you find them online on Facebook and LinkedIn, on Instagram. And these are the places where don't be afraid to ask for help. Right? Is that right, Teri?
It's huge. And for someone who's as self-sufficient as I am, and apparently I've got strong Liverpool bloodlines, and we're pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and to be an entrepreneur, as you yourself know, you need an extraordinary amount of resilience and just an ability to learn new things and adapt and build. Like the world of coaching that I'm in now is very different to what I started in 2011 when I was still married and I certified within, a Toastmasters certified speaking coaching. It's very different, but I've had to learn to adapt and learn to adapt. And some stuff I'm better at than others. And when I can't do some of the tech stuff, I ask for help. But it's true, being resilient, being self-aware enough to know, or to have family around you that says, Mom, you've been really low for the past couple of months. What can we do? Who can we help you connect with? Or do you just want a little mini holiday?
So I love that so much in terms of, let's say you have someone else who is struggling. So I can imagine I have some listeners now and they have parents, or maybe I'm thinking of someone whose sister recently lost her husband. That's such a good point that you can help them in ways where you're kind of asking them what they need. Not necessarily going over and kind of projecting and putting all of your stuff. You need to be doing this. You need to be getting out. Because if you ask someone, hey, you need to be going on vacation, or you should be, right? That's what you said. Don't shit on yourself. Don't shit on other people either.
Exactly.
And so if you're saying, like, you got to get out of the house, you need to go get some sunlight. Can you talk us through a little bit? What would be the nice balanced way of helping someone?
It's really tough because, again, it depends on different people. Some people are more easy to approach when they're hurt and in pain than others. And others, you have to be able to read the signals behind what they may be shutting you out because they need to protect. I can honestly say in the weeks, even though I knew Harry was going to die, in the weeks after he died, I felt like I was walking around inside out, like someone had turned all my nerve endings to the outside of my body. I felt raw. I felt like I was vibrating, but I also felt invisible. Because no one else knows that you've just come back from a funeral, or no one else knows unless your close work colleagues. But I had finished work by the time he died. I was working for myself, but my family and, people that were close to me, fellow Toastmaster friends that were hugely helpful. They could see when I was really struggling. And sometimes someone would just pop by and say, let's go across to the sailing club and have a drink, or let's go take a walk together. Those are the things that are really helpful. It's the people that come in with prescriptive do's and don'ts that just don't understand. And usually they haven't lost someone. Or, please don't do this, the one-upmanship of grief and loss. Oh, I know exactly how you feel because my uncle died, years ago. And so by the time Harry died, my mom had died in 2010. That was hard. I was still working. I had a wonderful manager who supported me beautifully through that whole process. And then about 7 years later, my father died. but he had watched me help Harry through the whole illness. And he was my go-to sometimes when I just needed to say, hey, Harry's going back in for another nasty test, and he'd check in with me. So he died, and 8 months later, Harry died. And so
Teri,
that was like,
wow.
yeah. But when people come up and they say, we're so sorry for your loss, when mom died, we're sorry for your loss. We're sorry for your loss. Okay. I understand we don't know what to say when people have died. And so that becomes the go-to. But then when dad died and Harry died, and I'm talking to people, I say, well, I lost my mom. I lost my dad. I lost my husband. I joked about it once in a Toastmaster speech. I said, that just makes me sound careless.
Stop losing people all the time,
Stop
Teri.
losing.
Jeez.
And I actually said in that talk, they're not house keys or an umbrella. I haven't lost, I haven't
It's
misplaced
not a
them.
loss. Oh, what would you say instead, Teri? I would love to explore this.
I do now. And so Megan Devine is one of the people I do follow. She's the one with the Refuge in Grief. She has a whole series of graphics that are really important to share that say, don't say this, but try this instead. And some of them is, and this must be really hard. Just right up front, when you
This
sit
must be
down with
really
some,
hard.
this must be really hard. That really sucks.
That's kind of my go-to. That's actually really good to hear because I just get really honest and I'm just kind of like, dude, that really sucks. Oh my
Yeah, it
God.
does. And
Like,
so many people
what?
don't say that. They want to
Yeah.
gloss over it because they want to make you feel better, which it's not their job to do.
It's not their
And the
job.
other thing is, I had a friend, she's a lovely British lady. She always wanted to cheer me on. She always wanted to say, well, at least you can, at least, if you find yourself saying, well, at least,
Yes.
zip
Well,
your
at
lips.
least, oh no, stop it.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least you've got your children's visit to look forward to coming up. Surely that makes you feel better. And I'm saying, surely it doesn't bring him back from the dead. Like, I can be really brutal with people that are starting to be too chirpy and just come on, buck up and get over it,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like learning the language to cope with grief. That's what grief literacy is all about. And this is what I'm starting to ask more and more workplaces when they're starting to look at their policies and procedures or how they're supporting their employees that are coming back to work. Like when mom died and I went back to work with 3 to 5 days, because that's all you get. My manager then was just so supportive and so loving, and I had the flexibility I need. There's huge documentation of how poorly we function when we're still in that grief state. We think we're doing okay, but productivity at work falls back. We could be a safety issue with some jobs at work. And the stats that I came across when I was researching that Disrupt HR talk about bringing grief to work.
Yeah. Such a great talk, by the way. It really, it even opened up my mind a lot in terms of thinking like, oh my gosh, you're right. We don't like take any time. This is wild.
Are we supporting employees enough was one point in that. Do the managers understand how to lead through loss? Lead through loss. Not around it or ignoring it or bypassing of it. Are we training them enough so they can lead an employee through a deep, significant loss of a spouse, a daughter, even extremely important pets, all of that sort of thing. But the bottom line, I was shocked when I read that in the US alone, it's like $1.8 billion a year are lost to companies in their finances and their bottom line to productivity due to grief.
Yeah, I think it was your Disrupt HR talk that got me looking into something afterwards, which to the effect was, if we don't allow people the time to grieve, like companies will lose even more money. But actually, if you gave them more time off or you listened to them or you were able to actually have them come into HR, talk about how heavy of a loss was this? Was this somebody in your life every day? Like you said, were you drinking coffee with them? Was it, because there could be different, even losing my dad, it wasn't as the same as like for my brother, because my brother's so much closer to him and they were together and he could come over to his house and help things out. But I'm on the other side of the country. So my brother's loss was different than mine. He needed more time than I did. That doesn't make anyone, more greater, loving, all that stuff. But talk to HR, do that. And actually the company themselves will lose less money or, I guess make more money or stay equal, whatever it is, by allowing that person the time to grieve versus forcing them back before they're ready. Then, like you said, you don't have productivity. You start making tons of mistakes. You don't actually just have someone else in their place doing the job as it should be done. All of this stuff I just thought was so clever. Such a great point.
Yeah. And the other point that I made there was there's not just the dollar cost, but good employees will leave if they're not supported, which is what I did under my second director, who did not understand how sick Harry was and was really not supportive of what I was going through as I'm doing multiple doctor's visits. My son was having brain surgery at the same time, and there was just a whole lot going on. And meanwhile, she was saying, well, you're not really doing the job we're paying you for. And in the end, I had to say, you know what, you're right. And she was absolutely right. And I had no strength left in me to advocate for myself. There are things I should have done, but I just couldn't even think about it. And so I just said, okay, so what I'll do is I'll quit. You can't quit the federal government in Canada. I resigned, and then I got a small pension, not as much as I would have had if I'd stayed, and not as much support as I would have had if I'd stayed. But at that point, I was a very valuable employee before Harry got sick. And in the end, I had to make a choice because I was, gaining weight, getting sick. I had chronic lung infections. I had numerous things going on. And I finally said, I have one job right now, and that is to go home and take care of him until he's gone.
That's
and
so
that's what
beautiful.
I did. Yeah.
Well, Teri, I just want to say thank you so much for just being so vulnerable and sharing so much of the story. I know one of the things that you said was take this situation you're in, take this grief that you have and find a purpose for it. Find a way to kind of still work through it. Like you said, work through these feelings, this grief. Don't shit on yourself. Don't think that you need to be doing one thing or another. But let's say there's someone out there. Something I was thinking about is my big thing that my platform is getting women to use their voice again, getting them to find that voice. And I was thinking as you're talking, I'm like, what better way to find your voice than to talk about it? So if there is a woman out there and she wants to tell her story, if there's a woman out there, you and I both know this now, there are stages everywhere. Even this podcast is a stage. There are webinars, there are podcasts, there are people online. They want to hear from women. They want to hear their grief stories. It's so powerful. It's so important. If they want some help with writing that speech, they can reach out to you, right?
Absolutely.
That's what you do. I mean, you guys, this is Teri's
do.
thing. I know she's talking about grief. She's a beautiful grief educator, but also amazing speaking coach. I can't even say the word speaking. See, that's why I need so much help, Teri. But I was thinking, what a beautiful way for them to find purpose. Maybe they just say it once or twice somewhere, but they get it out. So how can they reach out to you? Tell us a little bit more. They can get your book or anything like that. I want them to know you more.
Thank you. Well, my book is on Amazon in the US, in Canada, and the UK, wherever you can buy books on Amazon. And as long as you spell Teri as a 4-letter word, Teri, you'll find me. I am on LinkedIn. I tend to post a fair bit on LinkedIn, mostly TED tips. But I also, on Fridays, I'm trying to touch more on the grief aspect of the work I'm doing now because I'm a coach and I'm a speaker. I love coaching people where they are. And so that means I don't have a cookie cutter program that I put all my speakers through. People come to me, talk to me. Sometimes they want to know what their TED idea is. I do have a chance. If you go to my website, you'll see there's a chance to book a discovery call. We can chat about
what's your website. Do you know what your website URL is?
Of course, it's Real Impact Speaking.
Real Impact Speaking. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, spelt exactly what it looks like. On LinkedIn, I'm under Teri Kingston, but I love to have those half-hour chats with people to see if they have an idea we're spreading, which is so important to TED, but also more and more now to help women, as you said exactly, find the story that needs the voice that other women need to hear.
Find the story that needs the voice that other women need to hear. Whew, that just stunning. I gotta put that somewhere. That's I think where you and I intersect, Teri, is exactly that place.
Yeah.
Right? We just really want to be able to lift up voices, be able to help people find their power, find their confidence, because that's the thing is there's so many people. I never would have thought that I was going to be a speaker before I got this opportunity with TED. Oh, thank you. That's because I talk so much. And then someone was like, hey, you could actually put these words into actual boxes and make sense. And I was like, what? And the next thing you know, it's giving me a sense of purpose. It's helping me heal. It's helping me just be able to find a place for myself within this world, as wacky and wild as it is right now. And so that's what I encourage. If you're out there listening and you've been through any type of grief, it could be your loved one passing away. It could be a divorce. It could be moving away. It could be anything that grief means to you. Find some purpose through that. Find a way maybe to share your story. You can even come into, I have a Facebook group, Speak Honest. You can come in and just share your story there. There's so many women in there that just want to lift each other up. You come in and you say, this is my husband. This is what we went through. This is how much I love. Come and tell all your stories about it. We want to hear all of that. But Teri, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I hope you have a beautiful week.
Thank you. I appreciate being your guest.
Is there anything else that you would like to say as we wrap up today?
One final thought. You cannot take a story to the stage that you haven't fully dealt with yourself. And so when we talk about grief, it is very vulnerable and you need to be ready. So it's to have healed enough within yourself that you could stand in your own pain. It still comes in waves, but share the story from a place of strength and with that wound covered rather than the raw vulnerability we feel. Go to the support groups when you're still processing the grief. When you're ready, then that's when the stage and the audience will be ready for you. And so that's really, really important. We're not up there to have the audience as our therapists. We really need to be speaking from a place of strength and what we've learned, right? And that's really, really important. But do reach out to Jen or myself, or Jen's Facebook group sounds wonderful. Explore what grief feels like for you. And then when you're ready to maybe do a TEDx talk or put in an application for some of these other great stages, reach out. Find me on LinkedIn or find me on my website, and we can start a journey.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Teri.
You are most welcome. You take care.
You too.